But we were like the first brutally expensive restaurant. And now they're all over the place, and they spend 20-30 million dollars in a restaurant, and to them, they don't even bat an eye doing it. Just talk a little bit about the wine list, just very briefly about the wine list at Quilted Giraffe. We had an amazing wine list there. However, and by then, by the way, I already had my entry level from the quartermasters, and nobody knew that there. They didn't know it there at that, at the beginning, they didn't know. We had a sommelier, which his name was Victor Taylor. And by today's standards, he wasn't really a sommelier, but he knew enough about wine. And, he was also one of the managers there. So he and I had a little rough spot here and there at times, but we grew to become good friends. He lives in the outskirts of Paris now, and he's been there for a long time. But anyway, he knew computers. He knew computers back then when computers were still, laptops were in their infancy still. And he was like, you know what, I want to computer generate the wine list. And it was the first computer generated wine list. And it was interesting. No leather covers or grandiose covers. It was those, like the Z-fold, what they call them, C-fold napkins.
Oh, sure.
Those green and white lines, remember those? With the punch holes that you could tear off on the edges. And it would spit out the wine list page by page. And then we would take a little ring hole, like one of those rings that would snap together, but just the ring that we would get them at like I forget the name of that store that was like a Staples. I think it's Sandflax, I think it's called.
Okay.
Sandflax. It's like a Staples, but a high end, kind of like the Hammerschlemmer of Staples, So we'd go over there, we buy those little rings, and he's like, "Yeah, this is going to do." And so he created this idea that it's computer generated. So if we 86 something, we run out of. I'll go downstairs, boom, I'll print out a few new wine lists, go downstairs, tear them up, and we'll have them back on there, so we don't have. To tell a guest we don't have something, which was interesting. So we were the first ones to do something like that. And anyway, we had some really brutally expensive wines, like I became very accustomed to dealing with after that, and even during that. But we were like the first brutally expensive restaurant. And now they're all over the place. Now somebody opens up a new place and they spend $20-30 million in a restaurant, and to them, they don't even bat an eye doing it. They know they're going to make it up and trade later on, and that's the end of that. And back then, no. The reason why the Quilted Giraffe was created the way it was created, and so much money was spent in it back then for yesterday's dollar signs or amounts, was because AT&T footed the bill. They said, "We want you here, and we will build you a restaurant." Wow. And so he had, the architect that came in and did it. Just unbelievable stuff. I mean, back then, wine lists were different in certain ways than they are today. We basically had French and American wines. We had some Spanish, a couple of Spanish wines. What we did have was Único, Vega Sicilia. We, Ribera del Duero, which I call them super Riberas, like super Tuscans, because they're international varietals. They're Cabernet Sauvignon and Merlot, but mostly Cabernet Sauvignon with Tinto Fino, which is Tempranillo, but in Ribera del Duero, it's Tinto Fino. Tempranillo has approximately 40 different names, depending on the region or sub-region that it is being grown in and used to produce wines. Like Toro, it would be Tinto de Toro. In Rioja, it's Tempranillo. And we can go on all day with that.